In today's video, we're talking about the top 5 Fujifilm issues that are way overblown on social media. What's up, everyone? My name is Pete. I am a portrait photographer based in New York. This video is being filmed on the Fujifilm X-T4 and the 23mm Fujinon 1.4 lens, which I just picked up. And so far, I love it. So there it is. All right. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, blah, 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 do all that. Thank you. I appreciate it. It does help me tremendously. Really, it does. I hate saying it because I know people don't like hearing that, but it helps me. Go do it if you like this video. So there's so many things that float around social media when we're talking about Fujifilm cameras, right? So many negative things. There's a lot of positive things too, but there's a lot of negativity in our community, which is sort of driven by some of the people who love the brand the most, just love to bitch about it too. That's why I call them Fuji flakes. Anyway, I was thinking about some of these things today, and I decided to talk about 5 issues that I think sort of are overblown or misconstrued in our community when it comes to perceived issues or flaws with Fujifilm cameras. So let's talk about them in no particular order, or maybe a particular order. No, probably not. Number 5, you need optimized lenses if you're using the 40 megapixel camera. Now, this is one of those things where when I first got my X-T5, I picked up, I should say I did a test with the X-T4, but I couldn't really, there was no good way to test whether or not the optimized lenses were actually better than non-optimized, because the unoptimized or non-optimized lenses you already knew were probably not going to give you as much resolution. And so I felt like, and they're different lenses. So like if you use an older 35mm and a newer 35mm on any camera, the newer 35mm is going to be better. You know what I mean? And so what I wound up doing was just taking the same lens and trying it on the X-T4 and then the X-T5. But I just found the whole thing to be very tedious. And then I realized very quickly that in my own life and in my own shooting, I just didn't give a crap about either one of those things. It just was like, I found a lens I liked, and I just used it on the X-T4, the X-T5, and if I liked the images, I liked them. So I think that whole you must have optimized lenses, and people remember when the X-T5 and XH2 and 2S came out, people were freaking out about this. It was like a big issue. And in hindsight, I think that most of us can agree that just use the freaking lens you like and enjoy that damn lens and have a good time taking photos with it. So that was where I landed in that whole little controversy. And, you know, whether I'm using Viltrox lenses or Fuji lenses, older lenses or newer lenses, I think that it's still more the character and the sharpness and the whatever you want to call it of the lens itself that's important over whether or not the 40 megapixel camera sensor is going to optimize properly. So that there's probably some validity there, but I think it's overblown. That's the number 5 thing that I feel like is just has been way overblown, and the importance therein. All right, number 4. The 40 megapixel sensor has a ton of noise, so much more noise. It's so much more noisy than the 26 megapixel sensor that it might as well be a death metal band on tour. Okay, it's not that much more noisy. In fact, before I made this video, I had remembered that my buddy, Chris from Paltatech, who is really knows more about Fuji cameras than anybody outside of maybe the guys making them and the girls making them, Chris did a video comparing the XH2 with the X-T4 noise, just noise. And it was like a smidgeable more noise in the XH2, a smidgen, a dot, a touch, a little bit more noise. Yes, it's a little more noisy, but like nothing that would have such an impact on real world shooting that he could see. And I could tell you that I use the X-T5 in horrible, horrible dark conditions all the time, very little light, you know, dirty bar light or like backstage at a club light to take photos. And I'll shoot up to 3200, 6400 ISO, and the images are always great. I would say 3200 is probably the highest I like to go before I feel like it just gets noisy, and I would say it's probably with any sensor. However, I can tell you that I shoot with the X-T4 and the X-T5 in these kinds of situations, and I've never been editing a photo and been like, oh God, there's so much more noise on this. I just don't notice it. So again, I feel like there's definitely some truth there, but it's overblown. It's something that if you're looking at the 40 megapixel sensor cameras, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. You might disagree with me. That's your right as a sentient being in this universe. Number 3, the battery life sucks. Yes and no. This is true and not true. It's like one of those weird math problems that you just can never solve in high school. If this, then that. If you're using the older batteries and the older camera, then it probably does suck. But one of the things that I noticed right away when I got the X-T5 a couple of years back is that the battery life was freaking good. Like I was shocked at how good it was because I was used to constantly changing batteries all the time. So the X-T5 and the X-T4 use that bigger battery, which some of you know the name of it. I don't, because I just can't care enough to memorize the names of batteries. And you know the variations too, I bet, which is like, because there's like a higher resolution version and a lower resolution, the old resolution, a higher capacity version and a lower capacity version. But I don't know any of that because I have a life. But however, I can tell you that whatever the name and prototype and details on the newer battery are, it actually works really well. And even when I tested the X100-6, I found that that little square battery, which traditionally sucks a lot, was better. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but it was better. If you go with the bigger battery, the newer battery in one of the newer cameras, you'll be surprised. The battery life is very good. So, and if you watch one of my recent videos where I talked about how I accidentally forgot all my batteries, save one when I went on a very important shoot, it got me through an entire night of shooting, and I was cool. Number 2, the dynamic range is not good. Lord help me. Give me strength. Kyrie. The dynamic range, I should say, is actually quite good even on that little sensor that could. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that it's not as good as even a full-frame camera. And my biggest critique I would level against the 40 megapixel APS-C sensor when I compare it with the full frame on like my Canon R5 45 megapixel is in the area of dynamic range. So there is a considerable difference. So this is not something that's false either, but is it overblown? Yeah, I think it is. I think it really is. And the reason why is because I use the X-T5, and I have used it many, many times for portrait shoots in my studio, where I like to do a lot of color grading, and I'm going to be pulling the shadows a lot and the highlights. And it does an admirable job. It does a very good job. So I think, again, this is something where it's like, there's like an element of truth here, but if you just keep reading the comment sections on Fuji rumors, you're just going to drive yourself insane, people. I mean, sometimes reading the comment sections on my own YouTube videos really drives me insane, and just sometimes, not all the time. But so this is another thing that I feel like, yes, it's overblown. Let us not lose our lunch over it. Let us just continue to live our life and enjoy our cameras. Okay, number one. Now, number 5, 4, 3, 2 was in no particular order. Number 1 is number 1. The biggest Fujifilm issue that's overblown on social media, the autofocus sucks. All right, so this one isn't overblown. It's actually factual. Having said that, here's wishing you an awesome day. Go out and take some great pictures, and I'll see you beautiful people in my next video. Peace.